Charlie Kirk sat under a tent debating political opponents taking their turn at a microphone. Many gathered on the lawns, cheered, and some protested. Seconds later, they were all running in terror. The activist was struck in the neck by a bullet, mortally wounded. The images will be hard to forget, particularly for the many young conservatives for whom Kirk held celebrity status. Kirk's killing is both another episode of shocking gun violence in the United States of America and the latest in an ever-lengthening line of recent political violence. It is difficult to understand here why American politics is not really doing anything about this gun violence with a heavy hand. The trajectory really in terms of gun violence is bleak. And we suspect, we believe, 2 people who were arrested and later released in relation to the shooting death of Charlie Kirk have no current ties to the fatal incident, according to Utah authorities. Meanwhile, a moment of silence in the U.S. House of Representatives for Kirk turned into a shouting match between Republicans and Democrats. Many reactions coming in on the top global story.
To my great fellow Americans, I am filled with grief and anger at the heinous assassination of Charlie Kirk on a college campus in Utah. Charlie inspired millions, and tonight all who knew him and loved him are united in shock and horror. Charlie was a patriot who devoted his life to the cause of open debate and the country that he loved so much, the United States of America. This is a dark moment for America. Charlie Kirk traveled the nation, joyfully engaging with everyone interested in good faith debate. His mission was to bring young people into the political process, which he did better than anybody ever. For years, those on the radical left have compared wonderful Americans like Charlie to Nazis and the world's worst mass murderers and criminals. This kind of rhetoric is directly responsible for the terrorism that we're seeing in our country today, and it must stop right now. My administration will find each and every one of those who contributed to this atrocity and to other political violence, including the organizations that fund it and support it. Today, because of this heinous act, Charlie's voice has become bigger and grander than ever before, and it's not even close. May God bless his memory. May God watch over his family, and may God bless the United States of America. Thank you.
This is horrific. This is awful. And the assassination of Charlie Kirk risks an uncorking of political chaos and violence that we cannot risk in America. Are we going to do something, or are we going to argue over rhetoric? That is my question about this. We have to pass gun safety legislation and stop this.
We lost an incredible American today, a dear friend of mine. If you knew him, you love him. His name is Charlie Kirk. Taken by an assassin's bullet. Unfathomable. The only assurance I can take is that I know he is with his Lord and Savior right now. He has heard the words, "Well done, good and faithful servant," as I know many of you will hear. And I didn't quite know what to do after that news with the rest of the day.
Charlie Kirk talks about gang violence, and right as he finished that, he was shot in the neck. I was about 50 feet away. Again, I was more focused on wedging my way through the crowd to speak to Charlie than actually what was going on. And I did, for a brief second, see Charlie's head like slump over, and then the crowd just pushed back. It was a stampede.
It's a tragic day for our nation. And I want to be very clear that this is a political assassination. Charlie believed in the power of free speech and debate to shape ideas and to persuade people. And that's what he does. He comes on college campuses and he debates. But I want to make it crystal clear right now to whoever did this, we will find you. We will try you. And we will hold you accountable to the furthest extent of the law.
And here's a ground report from Daniel Woodruff from KSL News.
On the west side, and if you look just over there, that is where the shooting of Charlie Kirk happened. You see a tent. On the outside, it says, "Prove Me Wrong." That was the name of his tour. And he was speaking in that tent on a chair we've seen from videos on social media. And there were people on those bleacher-type areas watching and listening when the shots rang out. We've seen police officers over there. In fact, a little bit ago, an interesting sight, there is a walkway, a sort of a sky bridge just before the tent, and we saw a number of SWAT officers running. And that's kind of lines up with what Dan has reported and Mike, that there seems to be this activity on campus as there is confusion and uncertainty about exactly where the shooter is or shooters. We don't know a lot of information. As we know, UVU initially said a suspect was in custody, and now reports from NBC News and others say that a suspect is not in custody. And so some of us in the media have been just talking among ourselves about wondering about, where we're located and what else might be going on here on campus. I also want to have my photographer pan off to the right there. You can see in the parking lot, directly to the south of where we are, a number of law enforcement officers. I don't know what agency they're from, but they were just patrolling the far west part of campus. And that is something that we have seen more and more of, these uniformed and well-armed law enforcement officers that have been coming to this area to walk around and go toward the area where the shooting took place. We've also been hearing from people who, in fact, let's look over at the building there. It looks as if law enforcement officers are actually escorting some people out of the building there. It looked to me like they were students.
And joining me live from New York is Jennifer Kelly, American political consultant and host of the Jennifer Kelly Show. Jennifer, thank you for joining us at this very late hour from New York. It's not been an easy day for the United States of America. It's been a dark day. A lot of people mourning the death of Charlie Kirk. But I want to understand from you, what does Charlie Kirk's assassination mean for the conservative movement in America, especially young Republicans who saw him as their leader?
Well, I certainly heard from more young Republicans today than I have probably in the last 10 years since I myself was a young Republican. This is devastating to the movement on one hand, and on the other hand, this reminds me a lot of the death of Andrew Breitbart 15 years ago. And when Andrew Breitbart's life was cut short, there emerged a million new Andrew Breitbarts, a million new activists who had desktop publishing at their fingertips, who had Twitter and X at their fingertips. I think after the devastation clears and after the disappointment and the heartbreak clears, I think the same will be said of Charlie Kirk, that a million new Charlie Kirks were born on this day. And they will carry on his legacy. They will finish the speech that he was making in that public square. And, this is shocking, I think, so much so because, we've become hardened to the assassination of political figures, maybe, the deaths of military leaders. But to have it be a civilian, a leader of a free speech movement, especially among youth, I think that is what is so captivating and so particularly shocking about this story.
Jennifer, do you think Kirk's assassination highlights a growing threat of political violence in the U.S.?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, the polling backs this up. There was a poll done last year that said nearly 1 in 4 Americans now believe that political violence is an acceptable way to get your point across, to protest government, maybe even to protest, election unfairness. That is a shocking statistic that 23% of Americans now say political violence is the answer to your political angst. This is shocking, especially in a democracy. And you know this well, India is the largest democracy in the world. When free speech dies, democracy really does begin to die. And I think it dies at a faster pace when political violence replaces that speech. And I think we're at a real crossroads here, a real turning point, if you will, on how do we handle this going forward as a free country, as a democracy. We have to have free speech. That there's a reason it's the First Amendment in the United States of America. It's because our founding fathers believed it was that important that it be the First Amendment. So we have some work to do in America after the smoke clears from this. We will learn some things about this. We will learn how to better protect the people who are our political leaders and who speak in the public space. And but we certainly have a lot of work to do here in terms of getting this country unified again.
And how are his supporters processing this loss? Is it galvanizing them, or is it yet too early to tell?
Yes, I do see at the end of the day today and into the night last night that people were beginning to say, okay, we are shocked, we are saddened, but we will pick up this mantle and we will finish the conversation that Charlie Kirk started. You know, it's interesting that the left-wing media in America, you know, talked about how divisive he was. I don't think they actually ever watched any of his videos. He was the least divisive person. He said, hey, if you disagree with me, come on down to the front. I'll put you at the first of the line and we'll have the longest conversation, the most in-depth conversation, the most fact-based conversation. And so I think there's a misunderstanding of him that I think over time, his legacy will stand the test of time. And, you know, but in the meantime, it's just devastating to lose such a young figure like this. And someone who was making such an impact in the movement. You know, Donald Trump likely would not be president today if it weren't for Charlie Kirk bringing that youth vote, bringing the Generation Z vote into the fray for Donald Trump. So this is a significant loss for the Republican Party, but galvanize is a great word. I think that will happen in the coming days.
Jennifer, what message does this send on safety of outspoken political figures in today's polarized climate?
Well, you know, we've been dealing with this for a while. You know, I was a spokeswoman for the California Republican Party, the largest Republican Party in the nation. And I remember even back then, 10, 15 years ago, the hatred that was directed at me as a conservative, as a female, the death threats that I got. And I can imagine that today, for the young people who are in the public space today, with the prevalence of social media, with the rise of bullying, those threats are probably 100 times what we faced, 10, 15 years ago. This is disturbing. It's a disturbing trend. And look, I think, and I'm not being biased here, the rhetoric that's coming from the left wing of the Democrat Party is what's causing much of this. I do believe that the Democrat Party in America, they have even lost control of the left wing of their own party. Nothing that Nancy Pelosi says can get these folks back in line. Nothing Hakeem Jeffries or Chuck Schumer says is going to quiet the left wing of the party, who has become so radicalized. They are borderline domestic terrorists. And we have to really take a look. And I think President Trump and the Department of Justice will be taking a look at this in the coming days. Look, if your political rhetoric becomes so great that you're inciting a riot, well, there's a penalty for that in America. Right. If you yell fire in a crowded theater and people get trampled in the process of that, there is a penalty for that. There's a criminal penalty for that. So it's a tricky solution that has to be made. You have to respect the First Amendment and freedom of speech, but you also have to protect the free speech of others in the political space.
On a personal note now, Jennifer, before I let you go, I believe that you host the show, The Jennifer Kelly Show, on the same radio network as Charles Kirkwood. So very quickly, if I may, how would you want him to be remembered, given that he has such huge support and such a huge fan base in America?
Well, I was very struck by just the impact he had on our young producers at the radio network. The producers the young men at the station, they were all crying. They were almost inconsolable yesterday. They really feel that they've lost a leader of the conservative movement, someone who made it fun and healthy to have a constructive political debate. So there's certainly a feeling of loss there. And then also there's a concern for security. What is the security protocol going to be for conservative talk radio hosts going forward in America, for conservative TV hosts? It certainly is a concern. I can tell you many years ago, after battling Antifa and many of the protest groups of the summer of 2020, I changed my name professionally because I'm a single female. I live alone in New York City, where you can't own a gun. And I became concerned about my own personal security. So it is a real issue. It is a real concern, and it's a very serious problem. And we have to come together and find some solutions.
Jennifer Kelly, thank you for joining us live from New York. That, of course, is our top international story here on NDTV 24/7. Moving on now.